This is the Daily Technology Pulse podcast from Daily Computers, the preferred technology provider for public and private sector organizations throughout Maryland and Virginia. Today's episode is brought to you by Racktop Systems, an industry leader providing enhanced data security and solving complex data protection challenges. Visit racktopsystems.com to learn more. And now here's your host, Rick from Daily.
Joining us once again on the Daily Technology Pulse podcast, we have Will Crittenden from Racktop Systems. Will, it is an absolute pleasure to have you back.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Rick. I've been looking forward to this conversation for weeks now, so very excited to be here with you.
Yeah, and we really started this whole idea back in October when we were down in Richmond at the Daily Technology Showcase. By the way, how great was that event?
Yes, thank you. That was a great event. Thanks for asking about it. It is rare when you have an event at that nice of a venue with all the right people there, and very exciting times. I hope you guys stay at that venue for many years to come.
Well, I'm going to let the cat out of the bag. We are returning to the Science Museum of Virginia in Richmond this coming October for Daily Technology Showcase 2024. We're going to give all those details. We're actually switching up the dates a little bit. This past year and in years past, we would hold the Virginia Showcase on a Tuesday. This time we're going to hold it on a Thursday.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, we're gonna switch it up.
That'll be awesome. Hopefully this year I can get to actually sit through the IMAX movie as well.
Yes, and we promise that this time it's going to be a much better one. Last year we did we ended up doing an interactive walk through the galaxy, and while it was great, being able to say, oh, we want to go here, and then zooming through the universe and stuff like that. I did hear a few people snoring, so we're gonna.
I think I would have been on the edge of my seat being scared of heights. So it's one extreme or the other there, right?
We're gonna see if we can make it a little bit better than just the planetarium show. We're gonna go with the movie this time, but
nice.
But when we were at the showcase, we were talking about the fact that you can't call it an evolution because it's more a devolution of the tactics and the depths of depravity that these bad actors are going to try to get to people's data. So you are the one who keeps your finger on the pulse of this. What is the latest when it comes to the folks trying to steal everything that you have in your systems and more?
Yeah, so let me take a step back, and I like devolution. I'm going to have to steal that from you. But the very first iterations we saw of ransomware, we're talking 10 years ago, even more than that. But as of 10 years ago, the whole idea was let's encrypt your data and demand a ransom for an encryption key. That evolved or devolved into waiting and sleeping in the environment. I mean, of course, the good guys and technologists said, hey, we can stop this behavior by creating immutable backups, right? We went to the backup world. We went to snapshots. We created all these immutable copies of data. And the bad guys started waiting. So initially, and we've talked about it, I was at Rubrik when this started. So the backup company said, oh, this is all outliving retention periods. So, Mr. Customer, let's just hold your data for 30, 60, 180 days. Well, first and foremost, if you just look at that pragmatically, who wants to restore data that's 90 days old? That's a recipe for disaster. But in 2021, we saw the first time where the bad guys weren't just outliving retention periods, they were stealing data. And when I say stealing data, they don't know what the data is until after they've gotten it out. So they're throwing a wide net. They're trying to find anything that's of any value, and they're bringing it back home. And the simple fact of the matter is there's no technology ability to stop and defend that behavior. So what that has created now, a term we're calling extortion. It's not as simple as it once was. So the bad guys encrypt your data. Customer says, I'm not going to pay you. I've got a recovery point. The bad guys then say, well, you're not paying me for the encryption key anymore. You're paying me to delete your data. Now, this is where the backup companies have kind of realized their shortcoming. And I say backup, right? We're talking snapshots. We're talking every technology out there. The fact of the matter is once data's left the building, there's no amount of recovery that pulls it back. And quite frankly, extortionware is more profitable than ransomware today. And that is becoming the latest and greatest threat. And backups and snapshots, those are all necessary, but a backup is not a cyber resiliency tool. It is simply just a business need. If you deleted a file, I need to be able to recover it. So the way I talk about it, and the terminology I like to use, being the old DR guy, backup and disaster recovery is for unplanned outages. A hurricane's coming in, wipes out your data center or takes your data center offline. That's an unplanned disaster. I flip it over somewhere else. That I can build for. Ransomware is a planned disaster. It may not be planned by a good guy, it may not be planned by you, but you have to address it differently than simply a secondary copy of data.
Right. Because like you said, it's like the old adage, once something's out on the internet, it's there forever.
Absolutely.
And so somebody gets a hold of your data, just like you said, it's not just about them releasing it back to you. It's about them not releasing it to anybody else. And that scares the living heck out of me.
And oh, by the way, you're paying somebody that is inherently bad. There are many worse words I can use, but let's just say they're inherently bad. You're hoping that they do a good thing. It doesn't work out. I think the numbers from Gartner and IBM are like 40% of customers got an encryption key. That is not a very good return on investment for the guys paying a ransom.
Right. And this is not the movies where all of a sudden the bad guy gets a change of heart.
Right.
You know, this is not the Grinch where his heart grows 3 sizes. No, the only thing that grows with these bad actors is their bank account and their boldness.
Yes.
They're not in it for the goodness or anything like that. There's nothing that you're going to say and nothing you're going to do that's going to make them suddenly see the light. All they're going to see is the opportunity, even though you've paid them a ransom to get your data back. If they can profit off of that data, they're going to do it. And there is a lot of data out there that people sit and think, well, how could somebody profit off of this? And they don't realize just how valuable that information is to somebody who knows what to do with it.
And I've got 3 examples of that. Keep me on track so I don't lose this, right?
All right.
The first, and what I think is it's the newest one for me, and because of my history in law enforcement and many lifetimes ago, it's kind of a personal soft spot. So police departments are now becoming the attack vector of choice. And this one, it could be somebody over in an enemy state who's launching this attack, but it could also be your local bad guy. We know for a fact if you go out on the dark web, I can rent ransomware as a service. I think the cheapest I can get an attack on a particular customer or particular environment is about $3,000. So for $3,000, which by the way is cheaper than a lawyer, my local bad guy who knows he has a court case coming up is targeting that police department. And we've seen this in Virginia. There have been a couple of cases in the rest of the country, on and on. But once that evidentiary data is found and encrypted, now court cases have to be dismissed. We have seen that time and time again. And one of the things that kind of leads me to believe it's not an enemy state from afar, because nobody's ever demanding a ransom for the encryption keys. They're just encrypting it. And now court cases get dismissed. And again, $3,000 is cheaper than a lawyer. That's one. And the side effect of that is not just on that court case. If you look, Dallas is probably the worst example of this, and it's been going on. They may have gotten it kind of rectified now, but all of Dallas's emergency services, city services, public utilities, all were inside of one data center. Their entire city was taken down with a ransomware attack, to the point where police body cam videos had filled up. They couldn't upload the video anymore. There were service calls for police, fire, and rescue where their in-vehicle computers were not able to work anymore. So now I've got a police officer out there lacking the communication they've grown accustomed to with dispatch and with other officers, and lives are in jeopardy. And again, for what? It could have been as simple as somebody trying to get out of a parking ticket, right? I say that a little bit in jest.
No, yeah, you're right there.
And another thing to keep in mind with this whole going on, the average to recover from a ransomware attack now is over 3 weeks. Again, that's a Gartner number. We've seen it. That was in 2023. By the way, the customers they're talking to have all of these ransomware protection devices, and it still takes them 3 weeks. So if I'm running a life-saving organization or even a business that is taking money, right, and that's my profit margin, 3 weeks is unacceptable. It's just it's ridiculous. The second one, again, that I find is incredibly disgusting from the bad guys in school systems now. Again, we've seen this on the dark web. You can look up a bunch of information, but anywhere from kindergarten through higher ed, we call it K through 20. An individual student's information is now valued at about $250 per record on the dark web. I looked at that immediately and said, I thought about it from the worst of society when my kids were in middle school. What I know they had in their records was their name, their address, their guardians, their telephone numbers. Now I'm sure social media is, if the kids or the parents have something, they're connected. Right. Everybody's so connected. So now I'm giving all of that information over to a bad guy. That's why that information is so valuable. And again, your mind can race as to just the worst of humans in that. The other one I found out is once you get up to around 16 to 18 years old, that information is so valuable because credit is being stolen. Identity thieves are grabbing these guys, these children, before they even know to check their identity, right, and their credit score. So that information, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars per school system, is a target for the bad guys.
And that was the first thing I immediately thought of when you were talking about student information is, first of all, somebody who wants that can get it, and just the eeriness of having somebody know where a student lives.
Oh,
I don't even want to think there, because that's definitely stuff that is best left for movies. But the identity theft, right? Because when you're a student and you're that young and your information is out there, somebody could grab that and sit on it. They don't need it for right now.
Right.
They can sit on it and they can wait on it. But then the second that somebody turns 16 or 18 and is able to start getting credit, nobody who's just starting out knows to check a credit report. Nobody knows to lock their credit report. When you're 16 or 18 and you get that first credit card, the only thing you're thinking is, I'm going to dinner.
What's my
limit? I'm buying everything I wasn't able to buy before, because obviously they don't necessarily know how credit works.
Right.
You got to pay that back eventually. But somebody's going to sit on that. They're not going to go lock a credit report. They're not going to go check and see, are there any other credit cards in my name? Yep. Or that somebody could access their credit report with their information and be able to find out, do they have a savings account? Great. Now I can contact the bank. Hey, I lost my PIN. I lost my password. Can you, I changed my address. Can you get me all this information? I mean, that's terrifying. A criminal enterprise that is just makes me shudder, and also makes me think I'm going to be doing a lot with my kids' information.
And here's one on that vein that I'd never thought of. Actually, a very good friend of mine went to file her tax returns a couple of years ago and got a note back and said, you've already filed your returns. Somebody had enough information to file tax returns for her and get her refund before she ever had a chance to file or ever intended to file them. That's a whole new line of business that's coming up. Again, terrifying.
That is.
The last one that I have, and this, again, we keep talking about bad guys. This might be the worst one that I've heard yet. But also not just because of what they did, because it shows you that there are now really 3 streams of revenue for each attack. And I say this all the time, but we only know, and when I say we, the industry, the American authorities only know about 20 to 25% of the attacks. The rest of those go unreported, right? It gets paid out. Nobody wants the bad press, whatever may happen. The attacks we know about from last year, first of all, over the last couple of years, that ranks ransomware as the number 3 economy in the world. So there's the United States, there's China, there's ransomware. And I'm including extortionware and everything in that number. So the truth is ransomware could be the largest economy in the world if we really knew the numbers. Part of the reason it's growing so successfully is, number one, extortionware is becoming more profitable because nobody can say no to, hey, you need to pay me to delete your data. But this third level of attack is where the bad guys not only attack the company, but they attack the customers. So this one is a medical facility that specialized in treating cancer patients. In the treatment of those patients, there's just like I've had it done for knee surgery and everything else. You get pictures taken of the patient in varying stages of undress. The bad guys stole all that data. We expect, or it is expected, they were in the environment for 9 to 12 months. After all the data was stolen, they encrypted. And keep in mind, the encryption is really just a way to get your attention. You're a bad guy. You want the customer to pay attention to you. Encrypt their data. They have to stop doing business. So after the encryption process happened, the customer did exactly what I said. They told the bad guys, we're not going to pay you. We have a recovery point. Well, then the bad guys said, well, not only do we have your patient data, we have all these pictures of your patients that might be embarrassing that you don't want released and they don't want released. So the hospital, again, medical facility, went ahead, ponied up the money. Well, then the bad guys contacted the patients individually and demanded anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 or $20,000 from each patient to then try to delete those pictures. So now I have payment coming from the hospital. I have payment coming from thousands of patients. And at the end of the day, the hospital is going to get sued for a class action lawsuit. So they're going to have a very unprofitable year before it's all done. That one is the one that I can't picture a worse example of what could be done.
Yeah. With this stuff, we're really talking like this is the stuff that you see in the movies that's supposed to be fiction.
Right.
And it's not. It's real life and it's happening.
Yeah, and if you ever get bored, Google search ransomware attacks. Government runs a website, federal government runs a website, and you can see every attack from around the world every day. What we're seeing now is last year in 23, almost 90% of all the attacks included data theft, proven time and time again, 90%. The other thing people don't think about is the fact that once that data is left, to your point earlier, I'm sitting on all this data. My way of making money isn't to attack you, it's to sell that data to another bad guy. I did all the heavy lifting, you pay me up front, and now you go do what you want to do. That information is very valuable to the bad guys.
Exactly. And it's just going to keep, unfortunately, rolling downhill.
Absolutely.
Where it's going to continue to pick up steam. Well, Will, now that we've scared everybody to death,
right,
and we have them in a fetal position, sort of rocking back and forth, which we don't want, because we're not telling people this information to try to scare them. We're telling them this information to try to inform them. We're telling them to try to educate them. And we're also trying to tell them that it doesn't have to be this way.
Absolutely. So introduce Racktop, right? First and foremost. Our company is now in its 14th year. We were originally created by two former IC intelligence community security specialists who wanted to stop data exfiltration. We created Racktop. After about a year or two, we started selling, and our customer base is the federal government. It wasn't until about 3 years ago, maybe 4 now, that Gartner actually came to us and said, hey, you've got a product that needs to be in the commercial space. So based on the fact of where we came from, data theft was what we were built for. We can also stop ransomware. We can also do auditing and compliance. We have 260 reports built in, so I can make sure you're CMMC or SOX or HIPAA compliant. The whole idea is we have to start looking at data as the center of the protection scheme, right? And when you say that, a lot of customers think, well, I've got backups. What we're talking about, the difference is reactive versus proactive. When I'm sitting at the backup layer or I'm sitting outside of the storage that's holding my data, I'm looking at log files, I'm looking for anomalous behavior. That could be 24 hours, it could be 72 hours or longer away from the action. And by the way, those tools are built for change rates, right? So yesterday I had 1 encrypted file. Today I have 100 encrypted files. That's 100% change. That's anomalous. But all of the reason we talked about this up front is encryption is not my scary thing now. It's the removal or the exfiltration of data. So we come in, Racktop comes in, we're a software-defined security layer that protects data exfiltration, and we do it at the storage itself. So there's no way around this.
One of the things I was going to say is we had you on the podcast before where you gave some great information as far as, what the Racktop solution is, how it came about, I highly, highly recommend anybody who's listening to this who hasn't heard that, please go back and listen to that podcast, because that one is definitely great. Now, here we are again, like you said, it's all about looking at it in the terms of these are not attacks that happen quickly. It's not like the flash mob that storms its way into the Target or the CVS in downtown Washington, D.C. These bad actors are much more subtle. They don't want to do it where they have an audience. They want to do it in the thick of the night when it's dark and nobody's looking and the security camera is pointed away, just to give an analogy. They're lying in wait for the perfect opportunity. And then, like you said, it's how do you figure out, well, where do I need to go back to?
And I've been in technology for 2.5 decades. We have trained people. I mean, and you've seen it, Rick, being on your side of technology. As a technology company, I'm not going to come in and sell to something I can't do. If I can only sell red blocks, I'm not going to come in and talk to you about blue blocks. So when I start talking to the backup leaders in backup in the world, or the leaders in storage, or on and on and on, it's all around ransomware. And I get it. That's a huge problem. I want to keep the bad guys out. I want to keep people from brute forcing in. I want to have, like I was saying, I want to have unplanned mitigation for those unplanned things, or planned for unplanned problems.
Right.
But we're largely ignoring the extortionware side of the business that is bad guys now. Why? Because nobody's sitting in the active data-centric location to be able to address that. Again, other than Racktop. And I will say this over and over again. We're never saying to do away with what you already have, or identity, or anything else. But if you think about edge protection, list out your favorite vendor there. They're trying to keep denial of service attacks down. They're trying to keep you from breaking and brute forcing in using whatever credentials they have. The scarier thought now, or the target of choice, is a known good user. So if I were to steal your credentials, and if you ever get bored and you really want to get into it, spear phishing and social media and all the different things that are used to figure out your email address to then compromise your user account. Well, now I'm asking a technology to sit and look at Rick's username doing the right thing, but stop him when it's doing the wrong thing. And that's just not something anybody else is built to do.
No, there's no AI. You don't have the type of workforce that would be able to do that. And just like you say, it's how do you determine a good action from a bad action if you're not even sure who's doing it?
Right?
Yeah.
That's the thing. For anybody that hasn't seen the demo, please, you can ask Rick or any of the DALY team. We'll get you set up for a demo. You can even go out to YouTube and see a whole lot of our information there. But I would urge everyone to just look at this a little bit differently than they've been looking at it.
Yeah, we definitely need to remember that cybersecurity is not a destination, it's a journey. There's no, I've reached the end of my cybersecurity journey, I'm done. That happens when you turn all the machines off.
So I had a great conversation with one of your customers in Richmond at the showcase, and that customer came in and said, listen, I know we're behind. We're not at to your point, the advanced road of cybersecurity, so I'm going to rebuild it all. And I went, that's great. Do you know, I asked Mr. Customer, do you know how many EDR solutions, endpoint protection, desktop device protection solutions there are? And he was like, I don't know, 20 or 30. I went, actually, there's 72. There's 72 different solutions. And I could probably sit down and argue that 68 of them are just as good as the other if I was trying to sell it, right? Everyone does something better than the other. But my whole point was you have to now go through 72 different technology sales pitches, even if it's on your own, to try to figure out who to shortlist it to then figure out who you want to buy. At the end of the day, the bad guys aren't trying to steal your network. They're really not trying to steal your laptop. They're trying to steal your data. And there, I can tell you there's only one solution. So let's bring Racktop in and make sure that data is protected. And now you don't have to just jump at the first EDR solution you see that's, okay, maybe it'll work, but I need to get something in, right? Again, it lets you protect the crown jewels and then move where you need to go in an intelligent, timely fashion.
Yeah. And the timeliness is the big point.
Absolutely.
It really has to be timely because just like you said, if if something happens and then you're going to that backup data, and I'm sorry, every time I think of backup data, I think of the old days where I used to sit in the computer lab and I used to run those big tapes and just sit there for hours while all that was going on this huge tape. And then when that's done, I got to put it in its container and I got to put it away. And then I got to get things set up for the next day, for the next time you're going to do that. Whether it's an hour, whether it's a day, or whether it's a couple of days, how much data are you going to lose if you don't have that timely solution?
And the other thing that is is becoming a new focus that, again, the industry hasn't quite caught up with where we've been for a while. But whether I steal data from your primary, your secondary, your tertiary, or your backup copy of data, it's still the same data. You still want it not to leave your building no matter what. So now I've basically, in a guise to protect myself, I've created more attack points because now I've got data all over the place, different copies. And quite frankly, as an IT owner, I probably don't know what data is where. I've told somebody to back it all up at some point, but how many copies, where it is, those are the problems. I'm not fixing those problems. I'm just saying, hey, let's keep that data from ever leaving.
Right. And most people don't think that. Most people don't realize that the more backups and copies that you have, the more places you have this stored, the more vulnerable you are leaving yourself.
Absolutely.
Because we were always taught that you have to have these extra copies. You have to have backup on top of backup on top of backup just to make sure that you're not missing anything. But all you're doing is leaving yourself more wide open.
And there is one, I didn't want to talk about features deep down into it, but there's one that I think is very interesting that plays in with this. We call it a mutavault, but it's actually a virtual air-gapped copy of your data. Anybody who's looking at cyber vaulting or, again, secondary copies of data for whatever reason, this allows me to use production data without having to create a separate frame or separate storage array and to make it so that it is usable. To your point, I can air gap by putting it on a tape and sticking it off in a third location. How long does it take me to do a recovery? That becomes problematic. And the simple fact is any air gap that relies on network connectivity is breaking air gap rules, at least during that replication period. So that's something, it's a feature that we have that's very unique. If anybody has seen Racktop before but hasn't seen that part of the demo, again, reach out to Rick and let's get this set up, because we're seeing that now as a way to cost effectively air gap the right data, but still allow it to be used in the right circumstance. And it's a feature nobody else has.
No, and that's definitely something that we want to make sure that people understand is we're not just trying to offer any solution. We're not just trying to throw something at you. I love the analogy you used before. We're not going to try to sell you blue blocks when you need red blocks. We're coming in with a solution that it's going to be tailored to your needs, because again, your needs are that you need to protect, not just yourself.
Absolutely.
You need to protect your organization, but not just the organization. You need to protect the systems, not just the systems, but all of the people connected to it. Whether it's the people who are on staff earning a paycheck from the organization, the people who provide services to that organization, so partners, whether it's the people who are just inside, like students or visitors, customers, all of them end up at risk. And it's your responsibility to make sure that that risk is as mitigated as possible.
Absolutely. And the other way that I've looked at this, when we talk about business justification is the wrong word, but so in a higher ed institute, we now know that for every time they're attacked with ransomware, there's 3 days of learning lost. That's just the average, national average. So think about that in the middle of your semester, you're losing 3 days of learning. By the way, they don't extend the exam date to say, oh, we were down for 3 days. You just have to figure it out. In business, that model is still similar, 3-4 days. But think about how all the employees you're paying to sit by idle, and maybe even worse, the customers that now can't do business with you, and the customer satisfaction and trust that you've lost. Those are all things that you can't measure up front, but they are hugely detrimental in the lifespan of a company.
Unbelievable. And so, as Will has said, this is an issue that you want to raise to us. You want to bring DALY and Racktop in and have this discussion. The information is out there. Like Will said, you can go to YouTube. You can learn more about it there. You can request a personalized demo. We can certainly take care of that for you. We're willing to do what we need to do on our end to make you understand just how serious this is and just how much we can do to help you avoid all of this unpleasantness. Because in using the word unpleasant, it kind of like saying the Grand Canyon's a hole.
Yeah.
Hole in the ground. It's a lot more than unpleasant. It's reputation, it's data, it's lost revenue, it's intellectual property, it's safety, it's security, it's immeasurable.
And I will, if anybody has never been through a ransomware attack and wants to know what it looks like to do a recovery, by all means, I'll get on the phone and just talk through that. I have no sales. You know me, I'm not really a sales guy anyway. I'm just a guy running around shaking hands. But I've been a backup and recovery guy for decades, and I've seen that. I know the pain of it. You can't imagine how painful it is over and over and over again. And then you get that all done, and you're not sure if you actually got the bad guys out.
Yep.
So you may have done it all for naught.
That's the truth. And here in Maryland, we all know the story of what happened in Baltimore years ago with the Baltimore city government. I mean, when people couldn't do anything, couldn't renew, couldn't pay, couldn't this, couldn't that. And to this day, I don't know that they're 100% recovered from that whole mess. I don't know that there is 100% recovery.
Yeah,
I think
you never really know. The state of Louisiana right now, every customer of the DMV has their information out on the web. Bad guys got in and published every user's social security number, on and on and on. The CISO of Louisiana said he sat in his data center and watched data being stolen, and he cannot stop it. Said that publicly at a forum event, and we're hopefully meeting up with him this week to try to help him out there. But that's a problem, right? We see it over and over again.
So we want to make sure that we help you with this problem. Will, this has been great. Of course, you know you've given me nightmares. So when I can't sleep, I'm going to text you. But I get too many emails from you way late and way early in the morning. So I'm not exactly sure when you sleep.
Yeah. On the airplane. I sleep on the airplane. That's about it.
There you go. But Will, this has been great having you back, and really look forward to having you back at the showcase in October and at that great venue down in Richmond, and certainly look forward to connecting you with anybody who wants to learn more about this. So please, when you're out there listening, and I know you are, don't just hear us, listen to us, and let's get you in touch. Let's connect you with Will, and then we can see how we can make things a whole lot better for any of your organizations, whether it's state and local government, whether it's K-12 or higher ed, or even enterprise. We're here to help.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the time, Rick. Can't wait to catch up with you again. And
definitely,
as Rick mentioned, please reach out. Let's not lose any more sleep than we have to over this.
All right. Will, thanks again. Love having you on, and we're going to have to do it again next time I find myself sleeping a little too easy.
Yeah, just let me know. Not a problem.
All right. Thanks so much.
And that wraps up another insightful episode of the Daily Technology Pulse podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Before we sign off, we want to take a moment to remind you of some important legal considerations. The views and opinions expressed by guests on the Daily Technology Pulse podcast are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of Daily Computers or its partners. The content provided in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice. No part of this podcast may be reproduced, distributed, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of DALY Computers Inc. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please feel free to reach out to us. You can find us at www.daly.com. The Daily Technology Pulse podcast will be back with more exciting discussions on the latest in technology. Until next time, stay curious and stay connected.